The rain had been falling all night, soft at first, then heavier, turning the gutters into rushing streams. But what cut through the steady hum of the storm was a sound that didn't belong, a high-pitched, desperate cry. It wasn't the meow of a healthy kitten. It was thinner, weaker, a sound that made your stomach tighten before your mind even caught up. Lila froze on her porch steps, umbrella half open, as the sound came again, somewhere near the edge of her property. It was past midnight, and the shadows between the trees were black as ink. She stepped off the porch, her boots sinking into the soaked earth. The cries grew, sharper, closer. Then, she saw it. Half hidden under a warped piece of plywood, there was movement. She knelt down, heart pounding, and pulled the board away. What she found made her breath catch. A kitten, but not like any newborn she'd seen before. Its eyes were still fused shut, its damp fur clinging to paper-thin skin. It was so small she could curl her fingers around its entire body and still have room to spare, and lying beside it was another kitten, still, cold. Her throat tightened. The surviving one squirmed weakly, letting out another rasping cry. She looked around. There was no sign of a mother cat, just the rain, the dark, and this fragile life fading by the second. She knew the clock was ticking. Every instinct screamed to get it warm. Now, she tucked the kitten inside her coat, against the heat of her chest, and ran back to the house. Inside, she grabbed a towel and began to gently rub the little body, trying to bring warmth back into those trembling limbs. Its breathing was shallow, uneven. Her mind raced. A newborn-like. This wouldn't survive long without specialized care, heat, constant feeding, stimulation to help it even go to the bathroom. And Lila had never raised a preemie kitten before. But she knew one thing. If she didn't try, this kitten wouldn't make it through the night. The next hours blurred together. She heated a sock filled with rice to make a quick incubator, lining a shoebox with soft cloth. She mixed formula, testing the temperature over and over before bringing the syringe to the kitten's mouth. The first attempt failed. The kitten's tiny head rolled away, too weak to latch. But she didn't give up. A single drop touched its lips, then another. Its mouth moved faintly, almost by instinct, and it swallowed. It was the smallest victory she had ever felt so deeply. Still, the doubt lingered. Every time she closed her eyes, she feared she'd wake to silence. She set an alarm for every 2 hours, feeding and checking the kitten's warmth. She whispered to it in the quiet moments. "I don't know if you can hear me yet, but you're not alone. You're safe." By morning, she called the local vet. When the nurse saw the kitten, her eyes widened. "He's barely the size of a newborn mouse. This is going to be a fight." They weighed him, 78 grams. A healthy newborn kitten should be at least 100. Some vets would have told her to prepare for the worst. But Lila saw something in the kitten's stubborn, twitching movements. "I'm not giving up on him," she said, her voice steady. The days that followed were a marathon of care. She named him Pip, because he was as small and determined as a seed pushing through soil. Feeding, weighing, warming, cleaning. She celebrated every gram he gained, even half a gram. But just as she started to breathe easier, something changed. One night, while feeding, Pip suddenly stopped swallowing. His body went limp in her hand. Panic surged through her. She rubbed his back, gently massaging his chest. "Come on, Pip. Come on." It felt like forever, but then a tiny shudder. A breath. He was back. Her. Relief left her shaking, tears slipping down her cheeks. Over the next weeks, Pip's eyes finally opened, cloudy blue at first, blinking at the world like it was too bright to believe. He started to wobble around in his box, his legs still too thin to hold him for long. But every time he fell, he tried again. Lila began to see his personality peek through. If she was late to feed him, his cry was louder than his whole body seemed capable of producing. If she put her hand in the box, he would headbutt her palm, a spark of trust growing each day. Still, danger wasn't gone. At 4 weeks, Pip developed a wheezing cough. The vet diagnosed a mild respiratory infection, treatable but dangerous in a kitten so small. The antibiotics worked slowly, and during those days, Lila barely left his side. One evening, as she sat by the heater, Pip curled in her lap. She realized something. He wasn't just surviving, he was fighting. The first time Pip tried to climb her pant leg, she laughed. The sound felt strange after so much worry. By the time he was 8 weeks old, Pip was a fraction of the size of normal kittens his age, but his spirit was twice as big. The day she introduced him to the rest of the house, he discovered the living room rug and decided it was his personal racetrack. And that's when he met Oliver, her 2-year-old son. Oliver had been taught to be gentle with animals. But Pip took one look at this new giant and puffed up, trying to look fierce. Oliver giggled, holding out a soft toy mouse. Pip didn't attack. He batted it once, then sat directly in front of Oliver as if to say, "I'll allow you to stay, for now." It was the beginning of something neither Lila nor Oliver could have imagined. One afternoon, Lila watched from the kitchen as Oliver played with blocks. Pip sat a few feet away, tail twitching. When Oliver reached for a small car that had rolled under the couch, Pip darted ahead, blocking his path to the sharp wooden corner. Oliver frowned, trying to get around him, but Pip held his ground, meowing insistently until Lila came over. That's when she saw it, the exposed nail sticking out from the corner. Chill ran through her. Pip had stopped Oliver from reaching it. It was impossible to ignore. This tiny kitten, who'd been saved from the brink of death, was now protecting. The pattern continued. Whenever Oliver toddled too close to the stairs, Pip would dart in front of him. If a stranger came to the door, Pip positioned himself between Oliver and the noise. It was as though the bond formed in those fragile early days had given Pip a mission: protect the little human who was now his litter mate. But all of that would be tested one summer afternoon. Lila had left the back door open for fresh air while she folded laundry. Oliver was playing near the sliding screen. Pip was lounging beside him. From the corner of her eye, she caught movement, something slipping through the open door. Then Pip shot to his feet, fur bristling, a hiss tearing from his tiny body. Lila dropped the laundry and ran, just in time to see a large, stray tomcat inside the kitchen, its eyes locked on Oliver. And Pip was standing between them. Every time someone subscribes, it's like another little light turns on in this peaceful corner of YouTube. If this story touched you tonight, please stay with me. I'd love to share more soft, sleepy cat tales with you. The stray tomcat froze in the doorway, a patchwork of scars across his face, his tail lashing slowly, like a warning. His eyes weren't curious. They were hungry. Oliver stood there, clutching his toy car, completely unaware of the danger. And Pip looked impossibly small compared to the intruder, but his back was arched, his tail fluffed to twice its size, and a sound, deep and guttural, was rumbling from his tiny chest. Lila's heart pounded in her ears. She'd never seen Pip like this. The tomcat took one step forward. Pip stepped forward too, closing the space between himself and Oliver, his body forming a living shield. Lila didn't think. She grabbed the broom leaning against the counter and slammed it down on the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small kitchen. The tomcat flinched but didn't retreat. Instead, his eyes narrowed, and he crouched. Everything slowed. The tomcat lunged. Pip shot upward, claws flashing, meeting him mid-air with a hiss so fierce it made the hair on Lila's arms stand up. They tumbled to the floor in a blur of fur and claws. Lila shouted, swinging the broom again, this time catching the tomcat's flank. He yowled, a sound of pure rage, and bolted back through the open door into the yard. Silence, except for the rainwater dripping from the gutters outside. Lila dropped the broom and scooped Pip up. Her hands trembled as she ran them over his fur, searching for injuries. A small scratch marred his ear, and his breathing was fast. Too fast. But his eyes were locked on Oliver, as if making sure he was okay first. Oliver, wide-eyed, whispered, "Pip saved me." That night, Pip stayed curled on Oliver's pillow, his tiny body pressed against the boy's cheek. Lila sat in the doorway for a long time, watching the steady rise and fall of their breathing. She couldn't stop replaying the moment in her mind. How a kitten so small, born too early to even survive on his own, had stood against something twice his size without hesitation. The days that followed brought a new kind of bond between them. Oliver started calling Pip his little guard. If Oliver cried, Pip came running. If he laughed, Pip was there, batting at the air like he wanted to join in. And if Oliver wandered somewhere he shouldn't, Pip was the first to notice. But Pip's early start in life had left him with a delicate immune system. By the time autumn came, he was fighting another cold, one that settled deep in his chest. Lila recognized the signs from those first fragile weeks, the shallow breaths, the loss of appetite, the way he curled in tight as though trying to make himself smaller. The vet prescribed medication, but warned that stress could make things worse. So Oliver became Pip's nurse. He'd sit beside the blanket nest Lila made, reading picture books in his tiny voice, pausing every so often to stroke Pip's back. Sometimes, Pip would lift his head and press his nose against Oliver's hand. A silent thank you. One evening, Lila found Oliver asleep beside Pip's box, his hand still resting protectively over the kitten's tiny side. It hit her then. They'd both been fragile once. One just too small for the world yet, the other just learning to walk in it, and somehow they'd been strong for each other. Slowly, Pip recovered. By the first snowfall, he was back to patrolling the house, ever watchful of his human charge. The most striking moment came one winter morning. Oliver had dragged a blanket to the living room and was building a pillow fort. Lila was in the kitchen when she heard Pip's urgent meow. That sharp, almost scolding tone she'd learned meant, "Come here, now!" She rushed in to find Oliver standing on the couch, reaching for the curtain rod. The table beside him wobbled under his weight. Pip was on the back of the couch, batting at Oliver's arm to push it away from danger. When Lila lifted Oliver down, Pip immediately jumped onto her lap, not to be cuddled, but to look directly into her face as if to say, "I did my job." By spring, Pip was still small for his age, barely half the weight of a typical adult cat, but he carried himself like a lion. And Oliver, now more steady on his feet, had learned that Pip wasn't just a pet. He was a partner, a brother. One evening, Lila sat on the porch watching them chase each other in the grass. The sun was setting, casting everything in gold. She thought of the first night she'd found Pip. So tiny, so cold. She remembered the weight of him in her hands. So light she'd feared he'd vanish if she let go. Now, she realized, he was holding them up in ways she'd never expected. Months later, a neighbor stopped by and, seeing Pip shadowing Oliver's every move, laughed. "That cat acts like he's his bodyguard." Lila smiled, but there was a lump in her throat. She knew the truth. Pip wasn't acting. It was who he was. The following summer, Oliver had his first outdoor birthday party. There were balloons tied to the fence, cake on the picnic table, and kids running barefoot in the grass. Lila was talking to another parent when she noticed Pip sitting at the edge of the yard, eyes scanning the scene like a soldier on duty. When one of the smaller children tripped and began to cry, Pip was there first, not touching, just staying close until the mother arrived. It was subtle, but Lila saw it, and she knew. This wasn't just instinct. This was love. Years passed. Oliver learned to ride a bike, to read chapter books, to tell the difference between the sound of Pip's play meow and his something's wrong meow. Pip grew older, but never lost his alertness. And every so often, when the house was quiet, Lila would catch the two of them curled up together, Oliver's arm draped over Pip's small body, breathing in sync, just like that first night after the tomcat. The last scene I'll leave you with is this. It's a rainy evening, the kind of rain that's steady, gentle. Oliver is now old enough to sit at the window with a cup of cocoa. Pip, still small but sturdy, is perched beside him, watching droplets race down the glass. Lila brings in a blanket and drapes it over them both. Oliver looks up at her and says, "Pip's still watching out for me." And Pip leans in, resting his head against Oliver's shoulder, his purr deep and sure. In that moment, Lila realizes something she will carry forever. Sometimes the smallest lives protect the biggest pieces of our hearts.